somebody that's a pretty big deal. You guys, you really don't want to miss this. I have David Pollack on today, and David is going to tell us his story and how he got into politics and all the stuff. So do me a favor if you would. No matter what platform you're watching from, please share this out to everybody that you know. And let's get a bunch of people on here to hear David Pollack's story. Stay with us. We will be right back. All right, we're back. Let me bring David on. Oops. David, hold on. Hang on. There's one little tiny thing I forgot to do, and that is add you to the scenes. So, David, welcome to the show. I'm glad to have you here.
It is my ultimate pleasure to be. I'm hearing a little bit of an echo coming on my side. I don't know if that's.
Yeah, I don't know what that is. I'm running through my headset.
You hear it as well?
Are you still hearing it?
Yeah.
Try now.
Echo, yep. I mean, I can sound like God. It's okay, but
you sound perfect to me. I don't know what it is. I muted myself, so it shouldn't be.
That's all right. I'll make it work.
That's weird.
Yeah.
You still hearing the echo?
Yeah.
Does anybody else hear the echo? I don't hear an echo. I'm sorry.
What does the audience think?
I'm not seeing any comments yet.
All right, we'll just make it work. I'll just hear myself. It's okay. I've done.
Or if you want, one thing that might fix it, and it'll only take a split second. If you refresh your browser and come back in, it'll kick you out, but you can come back in.
All right, let me try that real quick.
Okay. All right, David, we'll be right back after these messages. So, okay.
All right. Better. That's much better. Perfect.
Okay, good. Nope.
I'll tell you a story. I mean, why not, right? My first time I did my podcast at home when I left Salem Radio, I interviewed Natalie Winter. She launched a new project, a product brand called She's So Right. And I was really excited for the interview. And I had one of the streams that I was on up, and I forgot to mute the stream. And so the whole time I'm hearing a delay, and I didn't know what was going on because it was my first time broadcasting at home. And it literally was like I had schizophrenia. I'm sitting here talking, and all of a sudden I hear myself after I'll show you the video someday. I'm staring at the screen going, oh my gosh, I'm trying to read her lips because what I'm hearing is absolutely insane. But
oh my God.
That's how you know you're a true professional, when you can literally hear yourself over and over again and still somehow concentrate. It was definitely a learning experience.
I've done over 4,000 live streams. So This is not my first rodeo, but I think that it's crazy. I've had the power go out in the middle of it. I mean, it's, you control what you can control, and but anyway, so David, I started this about 6 years ago, and it was literally to help people kind of break through in life.
Yeah.
And because I do believe that everybody hits those walls, if you would, in life, and they don't know how to get through them. And I believe that by hearing enough people tell their story, it helps other people. So that's what this is all about. So why don't you tell everybody, start with where you were born and raised.
Oh gosh. I was born and raised in South Florida.
Okay.
My parents are from New York, and so like every other New Yorker, they moved down to Florida for the warm weather. And so I grew up down there, public schools and all that fun stuff. And quickly escaped South Florida and went to Florida State University in Tallahassee. Had a great time there. I always had a passion for being in media. I did high school radio, and then when I was in college, I worked as a reporter and did some pretty cool stuff. Worked with the university's community relations, doing like almost like monthly news magazine PR shows. But I got to do a lot of really cool stuff and cover like college football and basketball games and interview really interesting people at the university. So it was cool. And then I interned at CNN, worked at Turner for a bit, had this dream of being big. And what do? You move to New York. I moved to New York City right after I graduate, and realized how difficult it was to actually do the thing you go to college for. You know, when you're young and you're like, oh, I'm just going to go to college and I'm going to get a great job. And, you go to college and you get a great loan. And then you graduate, you don't necessarily get a great job, especially when you graduate in a recession. So I remember moving to New York thinking I'd make it big, chasing the dreams. You know, if you can make it there, you can make it anywhere. Well, I didn't make it there. And,
Wow.
I decided that I was going to leave New York and move closer to family in Georgia. My father died at the time pretty young. When I was 23, he was 54. And so life was just weird. Not being able to fulfill my dream of making it big in New York. I'd moved to Atlanta. Like I said, worked at Turner, was waiting tables for 2 years, thinking like, what the heck is going on in my life? I had no debt. I bought my first car in cash. I was working since I was 16, and here I was borrowing $28,000 to go to college, and now I can't find a job. So now I have debt, no job, and I'm back to waiting tables again. So I remember
Wow.
well, when we were young in South Florida, we didn't have a lot of money, but my dad would take us around like Hollywood Beach area, like the intercoastal. And when we were there, I would be like, Dad, who gets to live in these houses? And he'd be like, doctors and lawyers, because he was like a blue collar type worker. And so I always had it in my head, okay, well, I'm not going to be a doctor. I don't like throw up or blood. So I was like, I could be a lawyer. And so I went to law school after 2 years of waiting tables with my media production degree. And yeah, my idea was like, maybe I'll be an entertainment lawyer. I'll try to merge my life and make it make sense. And found I enjoyed criminal law only because I watched Law and Order. And so halfway through law school, I wasn't sure I wanted to be a lawyer, but I met some really great friends, and I was committed to finishing and seeing it through. So about $130,000 later, I graduated a law degree from Florida International University with some great friendships, and again, no job.
Wow.
So I went to college twice to make a better life for myself, only to realize all I had was more debt and no job. And my first job out of law school, I literally sent emails and begged everybody. Job offers are being rescinded again. It was another recession in 2008. And I'm like, gosh, this can't be right. I moved to St. Louis, Missouri, where a buddy of mine was from. He's like, Dave, we'll start a law practice together. So I moved to a place I've never lived.
God.
I moved to St. Louis, Missouri, as they call it there.
Yeah.
And my buddy gets a great job with a railroad law firm making a ton of money. And I'm like, oh, so I don't know. So I passed the Missouri bar, no job. I begged people for a job, found like a tiny law firm that do like family law and criminal law. Did that for about a year and said, you know what? Screw it. My sister lived in Key West. I always wanted to live in Key West. So I said, I'm going to take the Florida bar. I'm not going to study for it. I'm just going to see how I do. I passed it, by the way. And then I moved to Key West for 3 days. My goal was to drive the conch train. Is what I called my F-it plan, because I did what I did what the society told me to do. I went to college. I borrowed money. I tried to get a job. I couldn't get a job, and I said, "Screw you, society." And I went back. I said, "I'm going to get a job driving the conch train instead," because I was around a lot of really sad people doing family law and a lot of bad criminals. And I liked the criminals better than the family litigants because they were better people. And so I decided that I wanted a change. I wanted to go and be around happy people, and I was going to drive the conch train around Key West.
What's a conch train?
Okay, so in Key West, and for those of you in the audience and on TikTok Live over here that's been on the conch train, give your thumbs up. So in Key West, it's like a those little trams that you get on in like Disney World that they make just to punish you for going to the park. They make you get on a tram and then go to another place to get on a monorail. Like, what are you doing? Yes. So the conch train in Key West it's like a tram. And there's two of them. There's buses and then there's the tram. I like the tram. And it's like a hop-on, hop-off tour. They drive around the city. They give you a little information about the history. You get off. You do this thing. You see the sights. It's just a ton of fun and a great way to learn about the city and spend the day. But everybody's happy on the conch train. And not only do you get paid hourly, it was like $30 an hour or something. I forget whatever they paid. But then you get tips. So I'm like, man, I could make more money than I'm making right now in this law firm. And by the way, my salary at the first law firm I worked at after I got out of law school and borrowed $130 or $30,000 was less than I was making before I went to college. So to tell you how screwy that is. So I was going to drive the contract and moved to Key West for 3 days. And then I got an offer with a law firm and another offer with another organization. And I ended up going back to being a lawyer, not in Key West, but in another part of Florida. And and then I'm fast forward here to the rest of my life. I spent a good part of 15 years doing that. And I turned 40. And this is the craziest thing. And I told this story last night on my X Space. And so it's interesting that you asked this question. And is this the kind of answer you're looking for? Because in media, I'm trained to shut up after 3 minutes. So
no, this is perfect, dude. Keep going. I love it.
Because usually, and for the folks at home watching on TikTok Live, and you're not supposed to talk this long. You're supposed to answer the question, shut up, let him ask the question, shut up, and then that's how it moves along. So this is a different format. I'm fighting my training, just so you know.
No, just roll, man. Right. That's how we do it.
So, after I turned 40, right? And then somebody made a "This Is Your Life" video for me. And I didn't want one of those things. And so I'm watching it and I'm getting sad. And then there was like, "Why are you getting sad?" And I said, "Excuse, you're getting older?" And I said, "No, it's because now I have 2 kids at the time. They were younger. I'm 40 years old, and I haven't done any of the things that I told myself I'd do. I had a good career. I was making decent money as a lawyer, but I wasn't happy. I wasn't proud of myself. My kids weren't inspired by what I did. I wouldn't ever want to volunteer to go to career day because what I was going to say, I'm a lawyer and I hate it. Like, I wasn't fulfilling my dream. I wasn't pursuing. It didn't take any particular talent to do what I did. It was just what I ended up doing because doctors and lawyers get to live by the beach. I wasn't making nearly enough money to live by the beach. So I sat there and I said, you know what? I owe it to myself. I owe it to my family to pursue my dreams. I had to be the role model that the next generation needs. They have to see people pursuing their dreams and not becoming another cog in a machine that tells you have to borrow money and go into debt and go to college and get a job that you hate. And you do that until you retire and die. I didn't want to do that. And mind you, I told you my dad died when he was 54. Yeah. And I'm 40 at this point. I'm like, I might have 14 years left. And I haven't lived my life the way I promised myself I would live it. I wanted to inspire myself and my children. And so what I did was ran for office. I literally changed my whole life. I ran for office, almost won. I almost beat an entire political establishment locally, and I did it with about a quarter of the money that my opponent did. Wow. I didn't win, but I learned a lot. And then I started working on other people's campaigns. And the campaigns I worked on were like campaigns, because I've always been an America First conservative, and we'll get into that later. But I wanted to give a shot to new candidates who wanted to take on the establishment like I did. And so I found campaigns that I really enjoyed working on with first-time candidates taking on the establishment. And then I was lucky enough to get invited to work on Corey Mills' campaign, Congressman Corey Mills, who actually jumped into my X Space last night randomly.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that was a whole story I can tell you about later as well. But,
well, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Let me jump in because I'm not media trained. I just love interviewing people. I want to know, because I have a 15-year-old daughter, and she's like, I'm going to college. She knows exactly where she wants to go. She's going to Baylor, and she's all these things, and I'm going to be a rich lawyer. I'm like, well, honey, I know a lot of broke lawyers. And she's like, I go, it's a little bit more than just getting a law degree. And so my question for you is, what was the deep thing that inspired you to become a lawyer in the first place?
I don't know if this is going to be an inspirational answer. I remember when I was.
It's supposed. Come on, you have to inspire everybody.
I've always loved the law and the Constitution, and I believed in it so deeply that I had to study it and grow from it. No, that's the reality is, I fell for the lie that, the lawyers make money, and if you borrow money and go to school, you can achieve your dreams. Yeah. I remember being took a class called mass media law when I was studying media production in Florida State, and I thought it was interesting. It wasn't certainly my passion. I wanted to be on television. And I just remember taking the class, and then when after literally not being able to find a job in the field that I excelled in and having all these loans, I said, well, screw it. If I'm not going to have my dream, I might as well have money. So I picked law school because I didn't have the prerequisites to do anything else. The other path I was going to do was I loved cooking because I used to watch the Food Network, and I didn't have, we didn't have a lot growing up. And so if I ever we didn't go out to dinner but once a year on our birthday, and it wasn't even a nice restaurant. So if I wanted to eat well, I needed to cook it for myself. So the Food Network came out when I was young, and I used to watch like Emeril Lagasse, and like
Wow.
the back in the day. And by the way, behind me, I have a signed book from Emeril Lagasse. It says "David, keep cooking," bam, in it.
Wow.
But I loved cooking because I was able to not only feed myself in a way that I couldn't afford to go out to eat, but I was also able to take care of the people that I cared about by cooking them a good meal. So I really enjoyed it, and I worked in restaurants. I understood it, and so my two thoughts were either be a chef or be a lawyer. And I talked to a couple
Wow.
of chefs. I read a few books, and I said, "Is this the career I want?" And I was told, if you like having holidays off, if you like, having weekends off, you don't want to be a chef. And I said, well, that sounds like it sucks. I'm going to go to law school instead. And honestly, that was the decision I made to go to law school, was based on the fact that I wasn't earning any money. My dreams weren't being fulfilled. I kept finding barriers and no's everywhere I went. I can't tell you the number of interviews I went on and got rejected for. And I just
Wow.
said, screw it. And I went to law school thinking, at least if I'm not going to be happy, I might as well make money, right? That
Right.
was my calculus for going to law school. How stupid was I to go and borrow all that money to get a legal degree, not being happy and not making any money? So the message to anybody thinking about going to law school, look, and I'm going to tell you, I don't believe that anymore. I believe like going to law school and getting that degree has opened actually a lot of doors for me. I understand things, my logic skills, my
Yeah.
understanding of the law and the Constitution, and being able to look at things and dissect them without being emotional about it and being factual. It has led to tremendous success in my media life. And as a matter of fact, you have to trust God, right? And in the
Amen.
direction that the direction I went in, took me to the inevitable place where I always wanted to be. And that's sort of the end of this story, to bring it full circle, Ken, is that when I decided I was going to change my life and not fulfill what I believe I was put on this earth to do, that's when my life changed. The doors started opening when I worked on the campaigns, and I won that campaign with Corey. I started my radio show, and immediately people started recognizing my talent. David, you're really great at this. Oh man, you're really good. My social media
Yeah.
following went from literally less than 500 to now I'm sitting at about 30,000 on X, almost 13,000 here on TikTok, and 4 or 5,000 on Instagram in just the past few years. I have relationships with some of the biggest people in the industry, and it's only
Yeah.
because I love it so much and I'm passionate about it, and I believe I have a little bit of talent. And so when I started pursuing my dreams and started doing what I believe I was put on this earth to do, when I started inspiring my kids and inspiring myself, and it's just my whole world has come together now. I'm able to use my lawyer skills to have discussions with people that are logical and rational, and able to understand things and not fall for the traps, so everything has come full circle. And now where I am in my life, I just turned 45 the other day, looking back at 40 when I said this isn't how I want to live, and then looking back at 45 this past weekend, I was invited as a special guest to Turning Point Student Action Summit. I did
Wow.
hits on all of Media Row. People were coming up to me telling me how they enjoy my content. And everywhere I
Wow.
went, I knew somebody. And I'm talking some of the biggest names in our industry. We're like, hey, Dave. And I'm like, how is this my life? And so that's the beginning. And now this is how we've met, at a place
Yeah.
where I believe I'm approaching the pinnacle of where I'm supposed to be. And so my advice to anybody watching the show, and the advice to everybody on X, is, you know, chase your dreams and find your talent. And then it's not easy, but pursue
Yeah.
it, because if you're good at something and you believe in something, and you're doing it for the right reasons. I didn't do this to become rich. Remember, I went
Yeah.
to law school because I wanted to be rich.
Right.
Right. And maybe when I was
Right.
young and naive, I wanted to be in radio because I wanted to be famous. I do
Yeah.
this because I believe so dearly in our country. And I believe we're at a pivotal time where we don't know how to talk to each other anymore. And we're lied to every single day, from our politicians, from our neighbors, from
Yeah.
everybody we look up to. Nobody even takes the time to ask what the truth is anymore. And when I ran for office as a nonpartisan candidate in 2020, and I would introduce myself to people, to be like, well, who are you supporting? Trump? And I'm like, this is a local issue. It's a nonpartisan race. Ask me about what I think about taxes and roads and water. Like, why are you
Right.
asking me about who I support for president? Because if you support President Trump, I can't support you. So we can't even have a conversation. I realized we had a big problem in this country, and it's only getting worse. And so my passion in this is having conversations with people, tough conversations, but being able
Yep.
to talk to each other, because this country was founded on debate, healthy debate, and we've forgotten how to do it. Everything's just violence and rage and anger. And so my mission in this has always been just to have tough conversations, and really just That's my story, man.
I think you'll agree. I think there's so many people are so invested in their own stories emotionally that they were that they were given by somebody else. They were programmed by parents or clergy or whoever programmed them, but they're so sold on that story that they just aren't open to what's that called, cognitive dissonance, right? Like they're just so sold on their story that they can't find that place in their brain to be open to just having a conversation. I was talking to the former CEO of 7-Eleven and Blockbuster, is a good friend of mine, Jim Keys, here in Dallas, and I was talking to him and another CEO yesterday, and I said we got to figure out a way to bring this divide to an end. Like we got to have people at least be open to coming to the middle and drop your weapons and your attitude and right. Do you agree or disagree with that?
No, it's exactly right. I mean, we're approaching an interesting time, aren't we?
Yeah, we are. And I think it's getting pretty intense.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
I'm reading comments over here on TikTok Live, and I don't know why I bother doing that. But I'm reading them, and look, I mentioned Trump, and literally everybody's like, "Bah, gah, gah, gah." And for some reason, people keep talking about Epstein, and that's a whole nother thing.
oh my
But
God.
yeah, it's just, and you know what it is. I think it's the social media, and it's
Yeah.
just this idea that people just can have an outlet for rage. And again, this is why I've set out to do something different.
That's awesome, man. So talk about the campaign stuff. Like you said, you ran for office, you almost won. Talk about I don't know what that was. That a year that you were in the making, 2 years? How much time did you spend campaigning prior to the election?
Well, so what happened was in 2020, it was 2 days before qualifying, and so in a campaign, there is a period of time in which you have to pull a packet, open your bank account,
Yeah,
get petitions, and then you qualify, and then
right.
once you qualify, you move on to the election. I had always thought about running. I've been one of these people that anytime there's something to be involved in, I've always been community focused. Like if my kid was in school, I was join the boards, whether it was the parents boards or the school, but whatever boards I had to be involved in. If they joined a team, I would offer to coach or be. I've always been involved in everything. And when even or whatever board I can get on in the communities I lived in, because I learned a long time ago that if you don't take it upon yourself to get involved and do something, somebody else will. And I have a very high standards for myself. And when I get to a place where I'm disappointed with the people who step up to lead and don't lead properly, what choice do you have but to lead yourself? And so I've always just said, well, look, I got to put my money where my mouth is. If I'm going to complain about the way things are, I might as well do something about it. And it's how I became an HOA president. I showed up one day and said, I literally, when I moved into my first HOA neighborhood, I took my kid to the playground. It was like bolts and screws sticking out. I'm like, what the heck is this? And I'm a lawyer. And I went to a meeting, a board meeting. It was like me in an empty room with the board. And I'm
Oh
like,
my
I'm like,
gosh.
guys, you realize there's screws sticking out of your playground, right? And they're like, yeah, well, we don't have the money to fix it. And I said, well, that's fair. I said, but let me give you some free advice as a lawyer who lives in your community. I hope your insurance is good, because if you don't have any money to fix the screw that's sticking out of the slide, next time some kid goes down and cuts their leg open on it, and I've already made you aware of the problem, you're going to be held liable. So do you have money for the lawsuit? They're like, well, if you think this is so easy, why don't you join the board? I said, fine. And they put me on the board. It was the craziest moment. There
Oh
was
my
literally like two
God.
guys sitting there in an empty room with just like me and some old lady, and like, be on the board. And I'm like, fine. And they're like, all in favor of nominating David Pollack for the board? And they're like, fine. And I'm like, now I literally got up. I moved across the room and I sat on the table, like one of those little folding tables with those little folding
Yeah.
chairs. I'm like, ring, ring. I'm like, okay, first item of business. Let's talk about the playground. So it was the craziest thing. So,
Oh my God, that's hilarious.
so when I'm doing this, I started advocating for it, and then the board, we started, me and this guy who, it was like this really old cranky president, this younger guy who ended up in the same situation as me. We ended up changing out the whole board. got that new playground, but that's a whole nother story. But the point of that is, I always
Wow.
had an interest of helping the community. And when I moved to this neighborhood where I live now, we have no HOA, but we had a great city. And I believed in the city. I loved the city. I wanted to live here and I wanted to thrive. And I saw some things I didn't like. And I said, you know what? I'm going to run for something. But I was timing it, you know?
Yeah.
And I was on a board called the local planning agency. It was like a zoning board, and I was helping make zoning decisions and doing everything I had to do, learning who the players were and all that stuff. But 2 days before qualifying, somebody called me, a former council member called me and was like, David. I'm like, yeah. He's like, somebody's running for a seat unopposed. And it was like a big, he's like, nobody else is running against it because nobody knew the seat was, because it was a seat that wasn't supposed to be open.
Right.
And 2 days before qualifying, they put in their paperwork really quickly and was like, not steal the seat, but in a very clever way, avoid any long-term opposition because nobody else was running for the seat because it was filled with an incumbent. And nobody ever runs against incumbents in this city because it's hard to beat them. So this guy was literally going to walk onto the city council. And so the former council member calls it, David, you got to run. You can't let somebody just walk on and take that seat. I'm like, okay. And in 24 hours, I had enough petitions to qualify for the ballot. I got on the ballot. I immediately learned because, I study. And I have a whole playbook, by the way, a political playbook that I'm not going to give away for free here. But I put this playbook together. And I'm like, I know what to do. And so I started going to all the donors, all the influential people in town. And I got there first before my opponent got there. And so I would go there and be like, hey, my name is David Pollack. I'm running for this office. And I just want to introduce myself. And I would say this. I'd say, look, the other guy who's running is supported by, the establishment. And I know you're going to have to support them. I said, but I just wanted you to introduce myself so you knew who I was and show when we could work together. And they're like, well, I don't have to support anybody. I can support who I want to. So effectively, I was able to go to these places, walk out with money, and get them to have an open mind before the other guy even got there. And so meeting by meeting, this other guy wouldn't even get there. And he'd be like, what do you mean this other guy was? It got to a point where people were like, oh, I was expecting you. I'm like, I don't think you were. It's like, yeah, somebody told me you'd be coming. I go, David Pollack? And they go, oh, no, you're not the other guy? I said, no, but I'll tell you why I'm here. That happened time and time again. And so I just copied the playbook and got there first. And so what ended up happening was I started getting support from people in the community. I started running a really good campaign. I pinched my pennies. I put out the mailers that I thought I had to put out. And I worked really hard, and I came really close, close. I would have won if I had a couple of endorsements. And I'll always remember, and I probably can't say this, so I'll be careful with what I say. There was a couple of endorsements that I earned. And I remember them calling me saying, I would love to give you this endorsement, but our contracts are up for negotiation. And all of the people on city council have called us and said, you should probably support this other person. And I'd love to help you, but I can't. And that was the difference in the race. And I lost by, I think, like 800 votes or something. And but it's fine. I learned a ton. And the skills I learned in that I've applied to for a lot of campaigns. And every campaign I've worked on, I've learned more. And I've gotten to a point where I understand politics pretty well, both from the big picture side and national level and the local side. And so, yeah, look, everything you do in life is an experience, and it leads to the next thing,
But okay, so I need to make an announcement. That, ladies and gentlemen, is how politics work, right there. I mean, it is. It's all about the who's padding who on. Anyway, and I know you're not that guy, and I know you work hard to change that narrative as well. So talk about. So you lost that. Where did things go from there for you?
But everything went up. I mean, look, so growing, my youngest daughter makes fun of me. She says this is my villain backstory, and every time I tell the story, she goes, literally, she's 10. She goes, I grew up poor. Like she always does it. And so I always get embarrassed when I talk. She's like, I grew up poor. Nothing ever worked out like it should. I borrowed all this money. And then I'm like, she makes it seem like I'm this victim. But so I'm telling you this story, and I hear her in my head going, I grew up poor. But reality is, and then this is a really important lesson for people to understand, is the way the system works, it's not meant. The system is not easy for you to break out of. I know this is America's the land of opportunity, but it's not an easy path. It's certainly more of a path here than it is in other countries, but it's not a path it's not a yellow brick road by any means. So I didn't understand the way the world worked. I told you early on that I thought my siblings and I were the first siblings to get a higher degree. My grandparents were Holocaust survivors. My other grandparents were veterans. My dad was a veteran. I mean, this was our family. We weren't generationally wealthy. We had nothing. Our parents did the best they could, but the reality is, when you're in that situation, you don't know how to break out of the system. Instead, you become part of it. And so I thought you had to go to college, get a degree, you get a job, work, retire. That's life. Buy the house, have the kids, and like the board game. Being wealthy wasn't something that I even understood how to accomplish. I thought foolishly getting all these degrees and sitting down in these rooms and having those interviews and shaking the hands and having all the answers would bring opportunity. It never did. It wasn't until I ran for office. This is such an important lesson. So I hope the people who are angry behind me that I support Donald Trump actually listen, because this is an important lesson for everybody, whether you support President Trump, you hate me or not, is when I got involved in politics, I realized that the game is rigged. It's not that you can get a degree and walk into a room and sit down and impress somebody. I mean, maybe if you go to Harvard. It's who you know. And I remember the thing that impressed me the most when I ran for office is when I would sit in these meetings, right? And whether they be donors or I'd be invited to fundraisers, and I would sit down in these rooms that were very wealthy people, like the people who are the business owners. And I'm like, gosh, who are the people in this room? Sometimes it was candidates, sometimes it was politicians. And then there was these very wealthy people. And I'm like, it all makes sense. Because the people in that room were wealthy because they were there, or they were there because they were wealthy. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And that's when the opportunity started coming too. When I started running for office and people knew who I was, it was like, oh, hey, David, I've never given you the time of day ever in your entire life, but now that you're running for office and you can do something for me, let's talk.
Right.
And it was like, this is icky. And you know what I'm saying? And it only gets worse the bigger the game gets. And like I said, I've run for a local office in a small town, and I've helped run some of the biggest campaigns in the country. And it's not that different, to be honest with you. It's just the level of ick gets much bigger. And so that's probably the most interesting thing that I took away from those meetings that in running for office is that the world is kind of rigged, but you need to know how to play the game and win. Because you can't just sit back and say, this sucks. I quit. I'm taking my ball and going home. I'm going to protest and yell at somebody and spit on somebody. What you have to do is figure out the system, beat the system, and then change it. Because nobody changes anything from the outside. It's much harder. It's much easier to change it from the inside. So you hold on to your integrity. You play the game the best you can. And what you do is when you get in there, you find allies that agree with the way you view things. And then you start to change things slowly. And so I worked very hard for years after that to try to change the GOP internally, to try to, like I said, find the right candidates, set them up for success, the people I continue to do well. But let me tell you something, and then I'll land on this point. Some of the campaigns that I've helped, some really good people, I saw them get completely destroyed by tens of thousands of dollars, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, from party money. These are good GOP candidates, America First candidates, that weren't the establishment's picks. Even though they said all the right things, they would have voted the right way, they were good people, the GOP establishment said, I didn't give you the right to run, and as a result, I'm taking you out. And I saw this happen so many times. It happens nationally, locally. You really have to work really hard to understand the system and then change the system. And that was my biggest takeaway. But it's allowed me to become very successful in this world, because now that I understand it, I can sort of call it out and then do what I can to change it. And that's what I've dedicated a lot of my time to in the recent years. So it's the Conservative Caucus. I'm the state director of Florida for the Conservative Caucus. And the Conservative Caucus, and for people know what a caucus is, it's just basically a group of people that come together with a certain idea set, and then they work together to promote that idea set, like a GOP, but just not politically affiliated, not under a charter. And yeah, so the way the Conservative, it's one of the oldest caucuses in America. It's a consistently conservative group of thinkers. And this almost looks like the Elon Musk thing, because he wants to start the America Party because he's frustrated with the GOP. If Elon Musk put his money behind a caucus, you can actually have more of an impact in changing the GOP than running a third party. So what I do in Florida is essentially I work with local GOPs with candidates, and we try to change the mindset and make sure that people are more America first focused and not fall victim to the establishment. And we try to get money to the right candidates and try to bypass the system of establishment money determining the outcome of elections. He's awesome. He's awesome. I call him Big Baby Chad. He is like he's a giant man. Uh the nicest, sweetest human being. He doesn't like people to know. Cynthia Hughes from the Patriot Freedom Project calls him Sweet Chad. Um, but I tell you what, when we were at Turning Point and there was I don't even know what they were protest, and Chad was walking through and somebody spit in his face, and he took care of business. He got a slap on the butt, good game slap on the butt, and he went about his day. But yeah, he's a great dude. Yeah,
he is phenomenal. So so some of the things that you are doing at the Conservative Caucus, talk about the because there are groups of people all over the world that get together and with a primary goal of implementing some kind of change, whether it be in the political arena, in their own personal lives or businesses. But talk about what the ultimate goal is for the Conservative Caucus and what you guys are doing to help the world.
yeah. To help we're saving the world, Ken.
Well, we can
No,
start with Florida. How about
yeah,
that?
yeah, Florida. Florida. Well, what the idea is this: you have to sort of steer the thoughts, right? There's two things, and every campaign has a couple of aspects, right? No matter what you're doing, you have to get money, right? Every campaign is fueled by money. Without money, you have no campaign, and you have to have ideas. What the Democrats do so poorly is they don't have any ideas. This is why they lose, is because they lately all they do is oppose and resist. People vote for things; they don't vote against things. And it works the same way in party politics as well. If you want to change the party, you can't just show up to a GOP meeting and vote against the people in power or be against the policies or be against the rhinos and all of those other things. You have to be for something. You have to have a platform. Parties are built on platforms. And so what the Conservative Caucus does is it stands for America First principles. I mean, and that's people are upset about the pork and the big beautiful bill. Well, it's not on President Trump. It's on the Congress that stuffed it all in there. They didn't give him what he wanted. They put in there what they wanted, and then the Senate put in there what they wanted. So if you want to have a more lean government with less spending, well, you need more conservative, fiscally conservative candidates. Well, fiscally conservative candidates can't win unless they're supported and funded, and those ideas have to be sort of fostered in our local GOPs. All politics starts local. People get upset, and their first interaction with politics is national politics, whether it's president, whether it's senator, whether it's congressman. That's their introduction to politics. They're angry. They want to change something, and then they get involved in the races that they have the least impact in, right? How many people have met the president, regardless if it's a Democrat or Republican? Very few. Right. Governor even. But you know how many people meet their council members or the county commissioners or even their congressmen? There's so much more access starting at the local level. And when you can get involved at the local level and change the narrative, whether it's replacing your school board, replacing your city council, replacing your county commission, that becomes the base of power in your local GOPs, because the local GOP's power is in the electeds, right? Yep. So it's who you elect dictates who controls your GOP. So if you don't like what people call rhinos, and I don't call them rhinos. I think the establishment Republicans are Republicans. The rest of us are rhinos because none of us agree with them. But if you want to change your GOP, start with proving, because what's the party for, right? Winning elections. So you could start showing that the America First ideas are the ideas that win elections. And you do that by starting in the races that you can affect. And we can take some of the money that's donated to us as the conservative caucus, and we can get involved in those local races and prove to the local GOPs that you can move forward with those conservative principles and win. And once we do that enough, well, guess what? The local GOP is now replaced by people with our ideas. And guess what happens when the local GOP shares our ideas? When they go vote at the state level, when they do their state conventions, you elect people at the state level that share our ideas, because this happens in GOP after GOP and GOP. It's like a game of dominoes. Now, the Democrats have done this very, 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 very well for a long time, which is why they tend to take over the school boards, they take over the city councils, and which is why they're so much stronger at the state level, because they're so much better organized at the local level. It's something the Republicans are figuring out, but we're behind. So what the conservative caucus wants to do is affect this change and get the right types of conservatives into office. And let me tell you the beauty of this. Elon Musk is upset with the way Washington votes. Elon, take some of your millions of dollars and help support our organization, the Conservative Caucus. Help us change some of these local races. Help us change these local GOPs, because local action, it really has a national impact. And once we change the identity of the state parties, guess what changes next? Washington. And so that's what the Conservative Caucus seeks to do, is promote real conservative principles, help candidates get in office that share our ideas, and most of it, I believe, America's ideology, and then change America. And that's the poll. That's what we do.
I think about, you were talking about, did you say your parents are survivors of the Holocaust?
No, my grandparents. I'm not that.
Grandparents. Okay. Yeah, because that math doesn't math. I was like, wait a minute. But I actually had Rose Schindler on the show, who her and her husband survived Auschwitz. So, and she was an amazing lady. But I think about the that there's this, because you're an anomaly. I mean, most Jewish people that I've talked to, not I mean, I know some very conservative Jewish people, but there seems to be a huge part of that community that supports the Democrats, and I don't understand that. What is that? Do you know? Do you have any? Nobody's ever given me a well, it's because of this thing. Like, what is the reason that they do that?
What, the Jews are Democrats?
Yeah.
I think that's changing.
Is it?
Well, look, there's a lot of synergy between the civil rights movement and sort of, the Jewish coalition, I guess, would you? So there was just look, Jews were historically persecuted, and still to this day, for some reason.
Yes.
I mean, it's like the one thing you're allowed to do.
Doesn't make sense.
Right. So we found a lot of synergy with the Black community in the civil rights era. And somehow, even though Democrats were responsible for the civil rights issues, somehow, when the Black community found a home in the Democratic Party, so did the Jewish people, and it was, and that's sort of the way it was. And then, of course, through lies, and decades of lies, that somehow Republicans were anti-Semitic, and they still, by the way, they still say that, even though the Democrat Party literally has the Hamas caucus with, Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar and people who literally hate Israel. But the Republicans are always viewed as being the anti-Jew party. So wow. I think what it is fake news led to the idea that Jews needed to be Democrat. But you've seen with Blexit, you saw Jexit, and you're seeing a lot more Jewish people in the Republican or the conservative movement, at least. But I don't know how. Like I said, I think it was just lies that got people to believe that Democrat was their home. I saw a woman over the weekend at Turning Point. It was a Black woman. She had a shirt that said, "I was born Black, not Democrat." And it was a fantastic shirt, but that's the same thing. It's like a lot of Jewish people are born into homes that are very liberal, and as a result, that's what they think they are. And it's not until you have to really engage and do the work to not believe the lies that come across your television set, and to see that there's another truth out there. And I think that's why. I think that's what's the heart of it. A lot of people just don't engage in politics. I mean, that's the issue.
What do you think? What do you think's going to happen in New York with this mayoral race? And that's, I think there should be a 100% flip, at least in the Jewish community. But like, what's going on, man? Like, that's crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. I think two things. One, I'll go down the conspiracy theory route, and we could talk about Marxism in the United States.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
other thing we can just go is stupidity, and I think it's a combination of both. Um, what you're seeing in New York. I mean, look, New York had Rudy Giuliani, and it was the best city it's been in a long time when Rudy Giuliani was mayor, and it's really
Yeah.
kind of sort of the pendulum has swung almost all the way to the other side. But New York is nowhere near what it used to be. A lot of people have fled New York after COVID. A lot of people are threatening to flee New York now if this guy gets elected. But the idea is people really don't know how bad socialism is. Those policies are destructive. If you look at any town or any big city that has, far left government, those are
Yeah.
some of the worst crime-ridden cities in America. Far left government is bad government. They just don't do what they say they're going to do. What they do is they take people, they make a bunch of promises, but what they want to do is simmer everyone down to living in the worst possible conditions, and then they continue to pretend that they're only ones that have the solutions for it. Somehow people keep falling for this. And New York is somehow falling down that same trap. There's a lot of people who really fear the city going further left. But how is that going to work for New York? How is it going to work for New York to continue to try to be a sanctuary city, to allow non-citizens to vote? How is it going to work for New York when you literally disband the New York City Police Department, you replace them with social workers? How is that going to work for New York? Already you can't ride the subway. There's filth, there's feces, there's crime, there's drugs. I mean, New York is nowhere near what it used to be, and that's because of far left government. And so you're going to go even further than that and double down. Look, it needs to happen, and I'll tell you why. Until people see for themselves how poorly they've been represented, they're not going to learn. And I think it needs to happen. It's sad because New York City is a great city, great people. I lived in New York just after 9/11, and we had a huge blackout, I remember. One of my first days at work, and I was working on top of Grand Central Station, and the big blackout, right? So I had to walk home like
Yep.
40 blocks. All the bars were opening now, so their food wouldn't spoil. The restaurants were giving away food to people. My neighbors would come down and share whatever they had. It is a city like, regardless of politics, New York City's people are the most caring, decent people. It's just that when you live on top of millions of people, you develop habits of not, you can't, when you live in a small town and you see somebody once every, hour, you go, oh, hey, I haven't seen a person
Right.
in a while. But when you're in
Right.
New York City and you're on a subway and you're this freaking close to 1,000 people 24 hours a day, you don't just wait. You'd be waving freaking nonstop like you're in a damn parade. So
Right.
a lot of people perceive New Yorkers to be unfriendly. They're not. They just don't carry on a parade when they walk around. But if you go to a New Yorker and ask them for something, they'll walk you to your damn subway stop if they needed to.
It's true.
And so New York is a good place. Unfortunately, they've had terrible government, and what it's going to take is further bad government for people to wake up and change. I believe in pendulum swings. The issue we have to watch for, though, is whether there's enough people left to do anything about it. I don't know. I don't know what's going to happen there. It's very interesting to see. I think people don't understand what they're voting for. I think they're sold the dream. I think they're sold this idea, and a lot of people who go up through public education and then liberal universities are sold this dream of Marxism, and whether they know it or not, and they don't believe in America. And a lot of these people are peddling anti-Americanism, and that, I believe, is what happens.
So let's pretend I gave you this magic wand.
Mm.
You like my props? Somebody sent that to me, by the way. Let's pretend you had a magic wand and you could wave it over the entire political spectrum here in the United States. I think that it's first off, it would be unrealistic and actually boring if everybody believed exactly the way we believe. But what would you like to see be the outcome in our country when it comes to this? I don't know that we've ever been as divided as we are right now. It seems a little bit insane to me. But what would you like to see the outcome be?
Let me give you some encouraging. I don't know if this is encouraging or not. We have been way more divided than we are right now. I know it seems like that because we have social media and we're bombarded with comments, and you believe that the country is being ripped apart. But you got to remember, we had a civil war. We had
There's that.
we had political violence in this country that you can't even understand. Going back to the Revolutionary War, people were tarred and feathers, their homes burned. I mean, there was really bad things, really violent things that's happened in this country in association with politics. Again, leading to the Civil War, and in the aftermath of the Civil War, terrible things during Reconstruction in the Civil Rights era. We have, I mean, there has been presidents. I mean, you go through the 1970s and you look at MLK and JFK and all those RFK. I mean, we've had political violence in this country like people have never seen. We're relatively calm right now, you know? So it's easy to think that we live in a divided era. It's just because of the media. You know, we have social media, we have alternative media. You're bombarded 24 hours a day. There's no place for you to escape it. It's not, you don't wait for the newspaper to hit your front porch and say, you know, here's what happened yesterday. You're hit with it. Everybody has a phone out all the time. News feeds pop up. So you feel like everything is much worse because you don't have a break from it. But I don't believe we are more divided than ever. That being said, there's certainly an opportunity for things to get worse. If I had a magic wand and I can wave it, and this is going to blow people's minds over on TikTok. If I had a magic wand and I can wave it, I would love to see us be able to talk to each other, not necessarily agree. The fact that we don't agree is a good thing. You know, I don't think, and you see this more in the Republican Party, and it's good that we can't get anything done because not all of us sit there and agree with each other on everything. That's how it's supposed to work. I wish more Democrats would work with Republicans, and it would represent a larger swath of the country. We've gotten to a place where it's one versus the other, and I can't even listen to you if I don't agree with you. And so if I had a magic wand to wave, I would wish we could just talk again. And I wish that we don't have to agree with each other, but we can find a way to make it work for everybody, because that's when America is at its best, when we all leave the negotiation table unhappy. And we don't do that anymore. Now it's, I have one extra seat than you, therefore we're doing whatever we want to you rather than considering it. And I think we could do better. But if you know anything about beekeeping, when you have a hive, the behavior of the hive is affected by the queen. And a lot of times they use more aggressive queens because they produce more honey, but you get stung more. So if you have a docile queen, you have docile bees. And it boils down to leadership. Our society works the same way. When you have leaders, and people can say, that's like just like Donald Trump. When you have leaders that say things that divide people, well, people will follow their lead. And I mean, this is going to be a controversial statement. Donald Trump isn't the problem. Donald Trump is the result of rhetoric. Donald Trump came because people like Barack Obama said how horrible the United States was. A president, I think Barack Obama did more harm to America than any other president, because he took office and a lot of Republicans voted for him thinking, oh, here's the first black president. He's going to unite America. We're finally going to move past this guilt that we have from slavery. And instead, he comes in and talks about how horrible America is and how divided we are and how, you know, it's unfair and racially and gender and all of this, everything. He took America and made it seem like it was the worst country on the planet. He gave rise, the negativity and the hate of the left gave rise to Donald Trump, because Donald Trump came and said, you know what? We're going to make America great again. We aren't this terrible country. And the way Donald Trump had to campaign was directly in response to the way the left campaigns. Donald Trump was the answer for the left. He wasn't the result of the negativity we live in. Look at the way they are right now. Have you seen the type of campaign Kamala Harris ran, Joe Biden, the things they said about, do you see what Hillary Clinton calling the basket of deplorables? The way the left talks about the right. And then they want to say that Donald Trump is the reason. Donald Trump isn't the reason. Donald Trump is the only thing standing in the way of us having to subject ourselves to this. He's the only Republican that's had the courage over my entire lifetime to stand up to them and call it out for what it is. So if people want the tenor of politics to change, start with stop calling everybody on the right or a racist or a homophobic or a bigot or a this or a that and this name or that name. And you could just see what everybody's saying here on these streams. That hate is matched with hate. You want to see the world change? Do it differently, because I'm going to tell you what. Republicans have been patient. Conservatives have been patient. But now they're starting to fight back, and the left doesn't like it. So if we want to see it get better and we want to be able to talk to each other again, somebody's going to have to be the one to be a bigger adult in the room. Trump has tried it. When he took office in 2016, he sat down with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer. He said, look, let's work together. You know what they did? They said, forget you. We're resisting you. And then they impeached him twice, indicted him 4 times, and the rest is history. So I don't want to hear people claiming that Donald Trump is the reason for all this division. Donald Trump isn't the reason for all this division. He's the only thing standing in the way of further division, in my opinion. I lost your mic, Ken.
This is my first time ever doing this. I'm sorry. I said class dismissed. I totally agree with you, man. That you know, I totally agree. I've seen this both parties doing on both sides doing very nefarious things, and I believe that we have a uniparty and an America First party. I don't know, like you're with the conservative caucus. That I don't think that there's I don't know. I feel like we're looking at historically we're looking at this event that's occurring with both parties kind of working together and behind the scenes doing things. It's like you said when you ran there. You got people calling saying don't support that guy, support the other guy, and it all had to do with some kind of a payoff for them monetarily in the end. I don't know, man. So what is the answer to all of this? What's your final words of what's the answer to bring this country together?
I mean, I believe the country is more together than it seems, and so I don't necessarily think we need an answer to it. We got to think only a portion of this country votes. I mean, what do we have? Like 150 million votes in the last. I mean, out of 300 plus million people.
Yeah.
So if half the country is participating in the election, and of that half of the country, even if it's a narrow majority, a majority of the country agreed on one person. You have to. That's not that divided, to be honest with you.
That's true.
So,
That's true. Yeah, I give you that.
I don't think we're really that far off. I think most Americans want the same things, and this is why they don't even engage in politics. I think most Americans want to be able to support their families. They want to raise their families. They want to live in a place that's safe and free from crime, and they want to come home. And really, it's pretty simple in what we need. The reason why more people are engaged in politics now is because it's becoming more impossible just to wake up and raise your family. It's becoming, you're being demanded to get involved in politics. You're seeing it in sports. You're seeing it in music and entertainment. And there's nowhere you can go anymore that's free from politics. And as a result, people are being forced to choose a side. But what you're seeing is when you're forced to choose a side, people are choosing the side of America. And when you talk about the parties, and Elon talks about the America Party, and I've said this before and I'll say it again, the Republican Party is the party of America because the Democrat Party hates America. They hate its version, they hate its founding, they hate its Constitution. They don't think it's a good place. So I think when people wake up and are forced into politics, they have to make a decision. Do you want to join the people who hate this country, or do you want to join the people who love it and want to make it better? And I think our side is actually much bigger and much stronger and represents a larger portion of the country than theirs does. And so I think if you want to see unity in this country and you want to see peace, what I would like, not so we don't have peace, but what I would like to see is more people who are not engaged in politics get engaged in politics and send a message with a resounding force that we reject the politics of hate and division. And then you'll see the tone and tenor change.
Amen. Wow. David, you are you're one of the smartest people I think I've ever had on this show.
Wow.
It's incredible. And you don't
print it.
I don't think you give yourself enough credit for that, man. You're very very well spoken on all of this, and I'm really impressed with that. So is there anything else you'd like to say to the audience before we wrap this up? Because I am going to end the live stream here in a minute, but I want to give you the last couple of minutes here.
No, only follow me at David Pollack USA everywhere. TikTok, Instagram, X. I post throughout the day, little videos, little comments, and I do a weekly show where I talk a little bit more in depth. And look, just whatever your side you're on, Democrat, Republican, non-political, I really don't care. Get involved. If you don't like what you're seeing, change it. Try to control yourselves and have a dialogue with people in which you disagree. If you think I'm wrong, don't call me names. Tell me why I'm wrong and give me a different perspective. And I promise you I'll listen to you. I might not agree, but at least you can understand my perspective. I can understand yours, and we'll learn something from each other. We have to move past the period of time where you're just going to call me a name and hate me because you disagree with me. We're never going to move forward that way. So my advice is don't be angry, be active, and go out there, make a difference, and chase your dreams. And follow at David Pollack USA. And Ken, I can't thank you enough for allowing me to come on your show and have this conversation with you, and the kind words. It's really been my honor.
It's been my honor as well, and my pleasure. You're phenomenal. So everybody watching, go follow at David Pollack USA on X, well, everywhere, on TikTok as well, everywhere. And if you're listening, it's at David Pollack. It's Pollack USA. Make sure you're following him on X, on TikTok, on all the socials. If you're listening on the podcast networks, just it's Pollack. So David, thank you so much. I appreciate you. And thanks. I appreciate it. Thank you for being on.
Thank you. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you guys later. David, stay with me. I'm going to end this, and we will see you all later. Have a wonderful day. And thanks again for sharing this out.